It's Tammy. Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, community. My name is Tammy Real Davis. I'm the president of the New York, New Jersey sub-community. Before I get into the discussion topic, I just have a couple of housekeeping. I would like to announce our annual CA PPM New York, New Jersey event, which will be held at the New York Life Building September 16th. This afternoon, we're going to be planning that agenda. It's going to be a full day. It's no charge, so please save the date for September 16th. I wanted to say a huge thanks to CA, Regal Consulting, Excers, and New York Life for helping with the event. In addition, I would also urge you to take advantage of the CA Virtual Summits that's been happening. I think it started yesterday. I attended one of them, and it was a really great session in regards to the new UI. Kurt Steinley and Brian Nathanson presented on that. So I think you really guys should take advantage of that, and also you can claim PDUs for the session. So today we have a great discussion topic on how Ericsson uses CA PPM to offer managed services to global telecom customers. Our presenters today will be Beverly Fitzgerald with Excers and Terry Ray with Ericsson. So Terry?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm speaking to you from the sunny state of Kansas City, Missouri. And we are going to go through and basically talk about a portion of how Ericsson has deployed Clarity PPM, not only here in Kansas City, but we've also globally. So with that, I will begin speaking on the first section, and then we'll also have Bev Fitzgerald here, who has been with me as a business consultant, helping us for the past 4 years now. Going strong as we make changes and grow our application and its functionality. So here's our agenda for today. Can read through it real quick. We're going to talk a little bit about who is Ericsson, where we were, where we are, and as many companies as you'll see as we go through this, we started from scratch in a big portion of our business. Even though Ericsson's been around for 140 years, managed services here in North America has only been around since we started back in 2009. And so we'll go through some of those steps, talk about our current solution that we have, move on into some of the things that we're changing as we continue to grow. And then we're going to open it up for questions there at the end. What I will say is, sorry, if you have questions throughout the presentation, I will stop after about 4 or 5 slides into it and do a little catch up to see if you all have any thoughts or questions at those times.
Please use the Q&A section. I'll be monitoring it and provide the questions to Terry.
All right, well, let's move into this. So, who is Ericsson? Many people really don't understand Ericsson. We don't do a lot of marketing and publicity. We are a Swedish company. So our headquarters is in Stockholm, and we were started, like I said, 140 years ago there. We're not Swedish meatballs. We have nothing to do with those. Like IKEA, we come from the same culture, you know, that the Swedish culture is a little different. They are a company, or excuse me, they are a country that has never been in a single war in the world. They're very neutral and very non-conflicting. We supply telecom equipment to all major telecom providers around the world, from switches to building towers, wireless, core networks, the whole thing, as well as software development. We used to make phones. We no longer make phones. We leave that up to the specialists that do that. We supply equipment, software, and other information to help our networks grow. And like I said there, that's a picture of a network operations center. We manage a majority of the networks around the world when it comes to wireless providers. So who's Ericsson really? And this kind of goes into more legal areas. We are a world telecom leader in the rapid changing environment of communications and technology, providing equipment, software, and services to transform through mobility. And I think that's a big area that Ericsson is really moving towards, is that whole supporting mobility. Statement down in the right-hand corner there is a network society where every person and every industry is empowered to reach their full potential. Our big growth there is out of actual doing, their foundation was built on equipment sales and providing. We're moving more to a services company. That's why you'll see a lot of areas where we grow in IT. We've got data centers, we've got developing centers all around the world in every major country. Like I mentioned also earlier, some of the 40% of all global traffic runs through networks that we've supplied. And we have over 1 billion subscribers, and we hit that mark last year as a milestone for us, as having 1 billion subscribers. We also, like I said, is providing services and the technologies. You can see there we have 35,000 granted patents to the company, and that grows multiple times every year. We're adding more and more. And then the last part, besides mobile networks, we also supply core networks, microwave, transport, IP, and we also are taking those networks, making them more efficient, helping provide the operators be more efficient and helping them cut costs with our operational support systems. So where we were, like I mentioned, we've had a relationship since 2009, with Excers and CA, in my case, back since about 2013. But the relationship really started with both companies in 2010 because Ericsson globally did not have a very good tool. We had little tools here and there. The tool they had supporting our network build-out and equipment supplying department, their tool is over 13 years old. There was no integrations with it, no reporting, there was no workflows, there was no command and control, and very little vendor support. You can tell right away CA PPM is one of those that supplies every one of those, and that was one of the big reasons that they did choose CA PPM on demand back 10 years ago and put it in place. Once we got that taken care of and selected, we put in place a run and operate agreement with both companies. After that happened in 2010, they quickly ramped up by 2012, and we had 2 additional PPM instances stood up. And those support, because of Ericsson's very globally and vast, there's different business units and different business strategies within the company. And so initially one system didn't support that when you're just diving into getting this type of a tool. So they had 2 other instances at that time. Sure. So the next page is in managed services. So what happened in managed services, where I can really talk about real quickly here, is we started in 2009 as an outsourced agreement between Ericsson and Sprint, where 6,000 employees moved over and still maintained their same job. And that was, making sure that overall network management was fine. We're keeping everything alive, watching any type of outages and quickly reacting to those, just like we'd done previously. We were still working on a lot of the cell site deployments and the management of those cell sites going on air and keeping them alive and keeping the capacity. Back in 2009, that really wasn't a big issue because at that time Sprint was on a downturn, and so there wasn't a lot of growth, but we were having to manage the network and try to cut costs. We've seen other areas in growth since that happened, areas of engineering where we put in a new network. We got off of the CDMA and went to the LTE network with them and put out new equipment, so that's where our growth started. Hardware deployment integration was a big part of that, as well as software deployment, development, deployment, and integrations. A lot of that directly around that growth of Sprint, moving out to the LTE network and working with multiple vendors and integrating all of that. In order to do that, we came over 6,000 employees to a company that never done managed services. So we had to jump right into creating a new centralized project management organization. And with that, our first priority was just keeping track of the projects that we had. We weren't allowed to bring over all of the Sprint tools, so we had to start from scratch. So we started off very young, and we all knew how to do project management, but putting those processes and governance items in place, that was our first goal there. Project management, well, we used emails, we used SharePoint, we used Microsoft Excel, just like a lot of smaller companies that have come out. We still relied back on the old fallback because we didn't have a great system. We evolved our using multiple spreadsheets in Excel, and risk, issues, changes, project teams, task management, and project statuses were all held in Excel. And that's not the best tool for doing project management. I think everybody on this call, I understand you all are using CA PPM, many of you for many years, and have left that far behind, but that's still a lot of my recent past. And we know that's not where things are good for managing projects. So like I said, watch us grow. You can do nothing but grow from a startup. So what was many people call them opportunities. I'm going to be straight up. They were challenges. We had data quality issues. We had over 500 projects active at one time going on. We had to merge multiple spreadsheets. We had inconsistent reporting mechanisms. Much of the work we do as far as operationally occurs in our customer systems. And then the biggest thing when we started going in this is we had major data loss because the tools we were using, we actually had taken an Access database, morphed it up to a SharePoint database and with presentation online, and we exceeded Microsoft's capabilities of SharePoint to the point that we crashed and lost over half of our data. We asked Microsoft to come in, and they said, thank you very much. We can't help you. We don't know how you did this. Give us your source code because we'd like to have this for our own information so we can build on it. But they couldn't help us. So we were in a big problem there, and at this time of many companies' career, especially with Sprint, you've seen them, we had to do everything quicker, better, and cheaper than before. That was one of the big reasons they outsourced the managed services portion to Ericsson, is that we talked about being able to do that. And so we had to come through on that promise. And so this led us to this point. We needed help. We had an urgent need to find a PPM tool. Our data issues were very prevalent at the time. We had to see a PPM was already in use at Ericsson with those 3 other instances within USA and Europe. And what I would say is those other instances, one of those, we have 2 local here to the United States. One of those has already gone away because we are implementing a global CA PPM tool with CA across all of our business units, across all of our country divisions. And so that's the process right now. It's collapsing those multiple instances to one application that provides a standard governance, standard process, ways of doing things. And we'll talk more about this later on, but there's some other benefits that the PPM tool can give a large company like ourselves, and I'll just leave it at resource management. So what we did is we implemented a 4th instance of this in 2013. And the reason behind that, like I just talked about, is there's different approaches in business unit strategies. And I'll talk a little bit about this in the next slides, but the way we manage business at Managed Services is different than all the others when it comes to tracking our finances. And then the last one here, we have a nice instance with having all these different tools. We had to start naming them. Well, we had to name our children. So what I'll talk about today is a tool of the CA PPM is called Consilium. And Consilium basically means in Latin advice, suggestion, wisdom, plan, purpose, and judgment. All of that really fit into what we wanted to achieve with this of getting a single tool to manage all of our projects in. All right, before I jump into the solution, I do want to take one of those moments and take a quick pause here so I can take a drink and you can ask questions. Tamara, do you have any questions?
No questions as of yet, Terry.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much. So what did we do? We implemented CA PPM 13.1. As you know, with these other instances, we've got a couple different versions out there today, and 13.1 is coming to an end this year as far as being supported by CA. But we didn't put the full gamut of the full functionality that it offers. We do our time reporting in SAP. We do other things in other systems as far as a Ericsson company. But we wanted to start off with the basics that we really needed that immediate support because our other tool crashed. So we put all of our projects in, and we have a linkage with our customer Sprint where we've integrated so they can send us projects today. So when a new project comes in, it comes straight into our tool. We have processes set up to manage and find the information and start gathering and putting the analysis phases in place and moving on to planning so we can deliver what they need. We don't go down to the finite task of everything it takes to do to build a cell tower. What we've done up to this point is really implement a project milestone management, making sure we have our toll gates in place so that we have those those stage gates, as some people call them, to know, do we want to invest and move this project forward at 3 or 4 different times throughout the project? Right after analysis, right after planning, do we come up with a contract agreement that we can put in place with Sprint? And then as we proceed forward with our first deployment, our final deployment and then closeout. We have what I'm going to call engineering workforce units. So this kind of dives into how do we manage our finances and work. We developed a special arrangement with Sprint with what we call service drivers. And what these are taking activities such as, I'm going to use building out a cell site tower. With the cell site tower, we have to acquire the land, permits, and all of that. We have an agreement so that we break these big projects down into smaller activities that are repeatable, and that's what we call a service driver. So every time we go out and clear land and gain the agreements for zoning and ordinances, we have a point in the project where we get paid for every one of those. Every time we construct the tower and have the tower built, at the end of tower build, that's another pay point. When we put equipment in, another pay point. When we finally have all the equipment turned up and we can start carrying traffic for Sprint, that's a final pay point. And so we get paid per unit, not per hour that we worked on the project or anything like that with Sprint. It is per those units that provide value to the customer. Our cost and everything is maintained within our own financial systems, but we don't share that with the customer. We just tell them when a pay point occurs, and then we have a contractually agreed upon amount for every one of those pay points, no matter where that is located at. So we tracked approved units, forecasted units, and actual units. And like I said, those project service drivers to us, those are money. So every time I complete a tower build, that's money that's coming into our pocket. And so that's how we track finances. We track the actual dollar amount up until just this year. The project manager really did not worry about. We are now growing, as you'll see later on, to where we're moving the responsibility of finances down to our project managers in the upcoming months. And so we're starting to make changes so they can see that type of activity now. And then the last part here is, and Bev can talk about this in a second if she'd like to add on, is a customized change management process. What we did initially was we received projects from our customer electronically through our integrations. We now had a system that our next part of growing was to put a change management system in place so that we could submit a change request to the project on our customer's behalf, so they didn't have to, but still get their approval on and have their review. But we also gave them the freedom, so if they wanted to make changes, they could send us a change request. So we have a system in place today to transition that data and do automatic updates to each other systems to account for when those units are approved or even when they're not approved and removed from the systems. Bev, is there anything you want to add on that? Because I know that's one of those things that's really different that you've talked about.
Right, and what we did on the development side with this, we heard Terry talk about the service drivers and being, price points and work points also. We added on to the standard change management process and functionality within CA PPM the ability through custom objects to go in for a change, be able to make the change to those in detail to those service drivers. So if we were in a month's time, say May, we needed to change our completed service drivers from 5 to 7. We were able to do that by attaching or joining the sub-object for the cost detail changes to the standard functionality. So what you see today is standard functionality for change requests was what we're calling our header information now. And we customize, of course, put some custom attributes in there, do some other tracking. We also go through a change request itself also has a life cycle, just like a regular project has a life cycle. So we were able, through these different stage gatings or life cycle of the change request, we were able to have communication and interfaces back to Sprint. We were sending a lot of detail information based upon the work that needed to change. So it was a slick customization that really did create a much more efficient and effective change request functionality for Ericsson.
Perfect. Thank you, Bev. And I guess one thing I'll add on to that is that's one of the things I've really appreciated Excers on is the functionality they provided us through the tool was strictly that. It was configuration and adding stuff on to their own, to the customizations, without actually having to go back and ask for some major functionality or wait for major functionality for the base CA tool to be able to provide. So that's what allowed us to move quicker and get some of this in place to really meet our needs where we weren't tracking actual dollars yet in the system. Thank you, Bev. All right, so like we've talked about, I wanted to give you a quick diagram. That first interfaces we did, you can see the arrows. It's back and forth between us and our customer for demand management, change requests. We also have other systems that we're interfacing with for engineering tracking. So these are date management systems that our customer tracks their projects and their builds with specific dates. We get that information fed to us so that our PMs don't have to go back into our customer system, even though they still can. We're providing it in one tool. So we're integrating that information to give the PM more of a one-stop shop where we don't have to see the customer system to get the data. And another area is our SAP financials. So within SAP, where our projects are, where our time ends up being reported, where our labor rates and all are stored, we're not bringing that into the tool, but we have an integration so that we can work with them and get reporting to show where are we on our project financials. What is the information we need to send to our customer every month now to give them an invoice so they give us money. So that integration is very vital for us being successful so we can produce those invoices and see any discrepancies where the customer may have disagreements on what we're reporting, like many of them they do a lot of times, but we have the data behind it to come to an agreement. So here we go again. That's where we were probably, I would say, 2 years ago, and really where we functionally are today with our operations, but we're already growing. We have to, back in our challenges, do it better, do it faster, do it cheaper. And so the way to do that is to add more functionality, to do more automation for our project managers and our delivery teams. And so what we've done is we've created a large project that's been going on for 2 years now. And the additional integrations we have is with a system called ConceptWave. And ConceptWave is a tool that Ericsson has purchased 3 years ago from an external company. It's now owned by Ericsson, and we provide it out. But we use it as a service catalog feature where we can document all these hundreds of services that our vision really is having the customer come into a front end, which is what ConceptWave will provide. And this, we're looking to go to a multi-vendor so that we have other contracts that we've completed with other companies outside of Sprint. We want to start bringing those companies into this tool so that we have some standardization. And so that catalog is no longer shared just between us and Sprint. We're creating a new catalog for our other customers. So they can come in just like, I'm going to use another company, Amazon.com, pick all their products they want out, put it in their shopping cart, and then once they approve their shopping cart, it falls into our lap within our own system, and we can start working to deliver what they've asked for. And that interface will help create those projects and provide feedback to our customer. And we are going down to a predefined WS level. So those catalogs not only tell us what the units are, but this new catalog gives us what task that each delivery team needs to provide in order to do that. So that's down to our WBS level. Who is responsible for doing that task? What is their LOE at that task so we can roll the LOEs up and understand what's the cost at that unit to us based on the revenue we're going to receive. So we are getting everything in place now. So we're providing the tools so our project managers have full control over the entire project. And like I said, it also we're doing additional 2A data management of project task information with that workflow system. We're interfacing with HRMS. we have an interface today, so we know that all of our, I think we've got 80-some thousand employees worldwide, and we're being able to use those on different projects here in North America, is not only who are they and are they an employee, but what is their role that they can fulfill, and what is their competency level. So we can match competency of a task with the competency of an employee, put those together and get the right person doing the right job for the right amount of time. That's where we're talking resource management. And then the last item we have as far as our interfaces is the centralized data warehouse. And that's that capability to merge these data and do reports so we do have up-to-date status across all projects and all portfolios and where things are, and then how we are financially. And we also are able to interface with not only the SAP data, we're going to bring that in, but also element management systems. So these are systems that are out in the network that are owned by Sprint. We have interfaces that collect data. We can't bring those into Concilium, but we can bring that into a nice centralized data warehouse and combine the data for reporting. One of the reasons we can't bring a lot of this information into our CA PPM is because we are using this in a hosted environment. So I think the actual location of this is out in San Francisco, where we're at. But due to our own security needs, regulations, and firewalls, we can't send all this critical data outside of our Ericsson system and put it on a hosted environment at this time. So that's one of the reasons this data warehouse is such an important factor in our operational model. And with that, there are new functions that those interfaces come in. I'm going to touch on these real quick here, and then we'll ask questions if there's any questions after this. So we're automating the generation of our WBS level projects. We're going to be putting in resource management. I've talked about that since the very couple first slides because it's really an exciting thing for such a large company when you're trying to cut cost. There's the model we have in Plano for network build-out is a lot of times when you ask for a resource, whether it's a full-time resource or if you have a contract agreement with an agency to supply resources on a temporary fashion, is once you request a resource and they're needed at different times through the project, you have to carry that cost unless you can utilize them somewhere else. In managed services, we've got that capability of doing that reallocation, and we want to be able to see where they're at on projects and when they're available and not pay for them when they're not being used during that downtime on a project. So that's what really excites us about having this capability for managed services, but also branching this out globally because Ericsson Global, this is a very important factor for them too, so that when I have an engineer that logs into a switch, we can have that engineer being in India or Poland or whatever country down in Mexico and being able to log into that switch and take care of the translations that are needed instead of having to be here. And we've done a lot in the globalization. It was a big, I'll be very honest, it was a big change for me in being a United States-based company, a Sprint, moving to a global company, because it was considered offshoring, you're outsourcing your information, where with Ericsson, being a global company, it really is you're what we call right-shoring it. You're putting it to the right people at the right location so that the companies, not only Ericsson, but the companies we support, can help cut their costs and remain profitable and competitive in their industries. Right now, we're currently Sprint focused, like I've talked about. We're moving very quickly to get these other ones that we've already signed, as well as future ones that I know that are on the cusp of signing contracts with us, into a tool so we can manage everything across the board. And then our new project controls. Like I talked earlier, we were down to we had 5 milestones, which basically meant we had 5 statuses the project could be in. With our new workflows and stuff that we're going in, we're moving up to 15 different stages a project can be in its life cycle. That gives us a better view of where things are and how we can look for problems early on and be a little bit more proactive versus always retroactive when problems arise. We're also the function of locking down that project between CA PPM and our concept wave application. Data integrity is very important, so when we pass ownership back to the other application, we don't want anyone making changes in the PPM tool until it comes back into PPM's ownership hands. The project still exists in both places, so you don't pass in large amounts of data, but the control feature is a very cool function that we've are really loving right now. Projects are based on project source. So, like I mentioned, we've got interface with Sprint to receive projects. We can manually enter our own internal projects, and we've created a tool that a different customer can come into a different customer interface and put their projects in, but it all falls in together in one place. And then Bev's going to go a little bit more on this in the next slides, but automatic requisition of resources based on a contractual schedule. So once we set our schedules up at what we call Tollgate 2 or contract with our customer, saying, here's everything we're going to deliver and here's your schedule you can hold us to, we want to get those resources scheduled. And with tasks that you have thousands of tasks per project, is what we're going to be moving to, with thousands of units being delivered, we want the capability of not having to go line by line and assign a resource. We want to be able to automate this through the system, and that's something that Excers is helping us to provide with the tool. So I'm going to stop here for a real quick stop, check to see if we have any questions right now.
Hi, Terry. No questions as of yet, but I have a question. You guys were talking about resource management, and you wanted the capability to see resource capacity across portfolios. But do you guys differentiate between project capacity versus core capacity versus enhancement capacity, or it's just kind of like one bucket?
Well, I would say I've got a few buckets. What I will go to, though, is Bev understands she's been working with but we'll get some feedback first.
Yeah, it's breaking up there.
Bev has been working with our lead resource, SME, and she can correct me if she wants to. Yeah, permission, Bev. But I think initially we're tracking at what is it overall, just for our initial resource capacity. The advanced stuff is going to come later on. But Bev?
Yes, Bev was on mute. That's correct. Right now we're looking at resource capacity, just overall resource capacity allocation and net availability. We are looking, one of the enhancement requests in the future will be to do resource allocation by customer. So there will be some resources that will be exclusive to a customer and some resources which could be allocated among other, many customers, depending on the type of work and, as we say, their competency levels and their skills.
Okay, I'm just curious because I know we struggle here with that. The bucket really doesn't work for us. We need to see the ability to, who has the ability to do project work, that sort of capacity. So we kind of had to do some work around in regards to that because, like, the whole number is just not going to work for us.
Yeah. I'll jump in real quick, Beth.
Go on, Terry.
To that level of what person has worked, and we're actually doing it in a blend. One thing I didn't talk about our contract with Sprint is we really have two contracts together. One of those is what I would call on-demand work, where we're doing these service drivers that I talked about, and we get a defined scope. The other area our contract is called what we call our True Managed Services Agreement, where it's the service assurance side. It's the teams that sit in those NOC operation centers, and they monitor the networks, and when something happens and a circuit gets fried, a storm of some sort takes down multiple cells. I mean, here in the Midwest, we got tornadoes, which are really this year more prevalent around the country more than ever. If they take down a tower, they're rerouting that traffic to a new location. If the system doesn't automatically do it by itself, we have to jump in and manually take care of that and then start sending the techs out to restore and bring everything back up. You can't predict that work. Our situation is we have resources out in the field that are working to put new equipment in a cell tower. That same resource is in charge of doing the service assurance to go break fix something. And so you can't predict that. And so that's where, with the break fix, we have a bucket of here's the availability that we know we're going to have, and their work's managed in another system that we will tie into later in probably next year. But right now, we're treating that as a bucket of hours, and here's how many hours they have. On the other side, we have groups like our provisioners, our project managers, our translations architects. They work per project. And so we are going to be able to see with them how many hours are allocated to that person for this task on this project. And we have views that are being provided that either aggregate that up by organization to see all the work they're doing in an organization. Then I'm sorry if I'm stealing your thunder later. Or there's views that say, okay, how much work overall is going across the entire organization, or just by project, or within a portfolio. We'll have those capabilities of breaking that information down to a individual contributor level.
Thank you.
All right, Bev, I'm going to turn this over to you. Take a drink.
Well, and I'll tell you what, Terry, if you could keep control of the display, I would, since mine seemed to have an issue. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the last slide, I just want to digress a second. In the last slide, there's a couple things I just want to expand upon. The first one is the automatic generation of project work breakdown structure. And Terry had told you that we are interfacing. Our intake is from our concept wave system where the customer goes in, builds the project with the help of the project manager within the Ericsson organization, or it's built by the project manager in the Ericsson organization. And they have this service catalog that they can go and they say, well, I'm going to build a site, I'm going to build a site, a tower somewhere. So there's specific deliverables, and within those deliverables, specific work units that need to be captured and interfaced in that detail to CA PPM, into Concilium. It is from that interface, from the concept wave into CA PPM Concilium, it is that interface that we build our work breakdown structure from. Early on in this project, and this is a huge program that's going on at Ericsson right now, we call it our NOVO project or NOVO program. Again, CA PPM is one piece of it, as Terry alluded. There's several other pieces and interfaces. And when we have our interface and we bring over all this detail, we initially developed the system for every service driver, for every location that has a specific service driver with specific deliverables and all those work units. Within the deliverables, we were creating a task structure, task hierarchy, from the work units at the lowest level up to the location at the highest level. If you can imagine performance on trying to create that with, say, 100 deliverables with 10 work units apiece, it was becoming inefficient to do. So we had to drop back and punt, and we said, well, what can we put in our work breakdown structure? We still needed the work units in order to do resource management work, because that's where the assignments were to come into. That's where the level of effort is coming into, standard intervals, all that, in order to perform anything within project management from a scheduling perspective and for resource management. So we had to step back and we say, okay, we're going to go to the work breakdown structure at the deliverable level only, but we had to create several new processes, new sub-objects at the work unit level in order to accommodate the rest of the information going forward. So we are now interfacing not just into the standard CA PPM work breakdown structure and task object, but we also have custom sub-objects around the PDUs or the deliverable units and these work units. So I just wanted to kind of, that's where we are today. So in the next slide, when I say the automatic requisition of resources on a contractual schedule, well, we do that anyway in standard resource management functionality. That's what it's all about. Here's my schedule, and here are the roles. I've got to go assign resources. We had to go a step further than that because we took those work segments out of the work breakdown structure. So what we had to do, Terry, and if you want to, new slide. Okay. We decided for efficiency for the project managers and for the resource and booking managers that we needed to make a concise, clear indicator of what their work is that they need to do, and we created a special portlet page that tells, first of all, for the PM, what kind of projects with work units are in a pending stage, which means it either hasn't been worked or it hasn't been committed to approval by the specific delivery lanes, which are the working segments of Ericsson Managed Services. He also knows of his work for the PM, what's in a soft book, a hard book, and what's in a closed status. From the requisition page, he can click on, the PM clicks on an icon to move into an operational page where he can do two things from this operational page. He can make changes to those work units for standard, interval, start-stop dates, everything that you would do either from your task or from your Gantt chart or whatever in standard CA PPM, he can do from this customized page, what we call the operational page. That then in turn would update the work breakdown structure. And when he gets the, and I'm using he just kind of generically, I know there are she's out there too that are project managers, but when the project manager has his schedule the way he wants it, he can from that page then be able to request approval from what Ericsson calls their delivery lanes, delivery lane being that working unit. And many of these projects, as you can understand, the building of a site, of a tower, takes from several different areas within EMS, Ericsson Managed Services. You have your site development people, you have your technicians, you have your IT people if they have to do software. So these are all different working units within managed services, and we have to have the approval of all of those units. They can continue on with the project at the scheduled time that the PM has scheduled here, and we've agreed upon that in order for that project to move any further into going into the stage gating of final approval to do the project by Ericsson, and finally being able to send a contract to the customer and receive customer confirmation. So, Terry, if you'd advance again, please. And unfortunately, this is a large screen. I'm sorry. I don't know how it's showing up in the slides, but this is the requisition view. So when the PM signs on to the system, this can be his home page if he so chooses. So when you see in the pending allocations, these are all the projects for which he has not worked or is still working before he commits or sends it for delivery lane commitment. It's also pending because anything that is sent to commitment will not move into the soft book status until it's been agreed to by the delivery lanes and allocated. We move into hard book. Soft book and hard book for purposes on these portlets. These are 4 different portlets on one portlet page. Soft book and hard book are not the same as soft book and hard book per CA PPM resource management. Ericsson has their own definition of what's hard booked and what's soft booked, and what we had to do was take where it is, what the project status is and what the delivery lane status might be in order to do smoke and mirrors for it to appear as a pending soft book, a hard book, or closed. So if I'm a PM and I click into one of my projects up in the pending status, this is the project management operational page. So we go down to the PM operational page. These are multiple portlets again on a specific page. It can be filtered by deliverable unit, so you can work one deliverable unit at a time, deliverable unit having several work units under it, as I mentioned previously. So the PM now, this is where he can do 2 different things. We can look at the work units, and on this particular page, without going back to the tasks or without going back to Gantt chart, he can make changes to most every column in that particular portlet called work units. One column that cannot be changed by the PM is the role. You can actually make a change to the organization units that need to support that role, but he can't change that role. So if he makes any changes to the LOEs, to the standard interval, to lead time, role, VP, no, he can't make role, sorry, service area being the area kind of like a location. It goes along with the location. The service area is actually where the resources need to come from in order to do that work. So you're going to see service areas, and if you see virtual, that means it can come from anywhere. But when you have one task there that looks like it has to be performed by resources assigned to this certain service area. So after he makes changes to this particular portlet, the work breakdown structure is updated through a scheduled process. Okay? When he comes back and everything is fine, and well, let's go down. Would you go back up, Terry? I'm sorry. Down in the last 2 portlets within this page, we actually have the row LOE summary and the work unit summary broken out. And he can see, the PM can see within the month, or depending on the schedule, whether there's resources that are going to be available under those roles. So he knows right now 3 of his roles, looking at the row LOE summary, 3 of his roles are good right now. They're all green for this proposed schedule. However, that 4th one is red. So he would know then that he needs to move whatever those are in the units. He would need to move those around in order to either get a green indicator, or he already knows he's not going to be able to get this project through the booking and resource manager because they're going to tell him, you know, no, we don't have the resources in order to do that. So these are just indicators that were added on this specific page for the PM to already know whether there's an issue or not and where he needs to arrange differently his work unit. And as you know, making one change to the work unit, especially if dependencies are on that work unit will change your whole work breakdown structure. So a lot of times that, that will occur where we have to go back and probably reschedule the project, it can't go any further. It has to remain in planning stage, and the customer has to be notified. Can't give you your suggested delivery date. Okay? Okay. So we also did a requisition page for booking and resource managers with the same type of information. And it is secured by only those work units for which they have security to perform the work. So where the PM sees all of his work units because, he has to in order to work them, the resource manager and the booking manager will only see those which, if they're assigned as the booking manager for that particular role, for that particular organization. And the way that we've structured this organization, we're not using the standard booking resource manager functionality within CA PPM. We actually have a custom object for that also. Okay, the operational page for the booking manager and the resource manager looks about the same too, but again, only those work units that they need to work on will show up, and we also can look at resource allocation and project allocation from the screen. And from this screen, the ability to assign resources by clicking an icon. We developed a resource, now mind you, we're still on 13.1. So the resource pooling process was developed, and then we do still have an individual contributor. So these are still custom processes that at some point, and I'm not real highly technical, but at some point our technical team has been able to link them into the standard CA PPM, but the field's just a bit different, but we're able to do a pooling, which in 13.1 we're not able to do a pooling, and that was a big win for us in order to do the allocation of resources for certain delivery lanes. Next screen. Oops. So the requisition page, and sorry, I had to put this in two different slides. It's the same. We've got, here's your pending, you got to go work. Here are the ones that you have soft booked. Next slide. Here's what we have hard booked, and here's all your work that's now closed. Okay. So the next slide. So this is the booking manager and the resource manager operational page. And to Ericsson Managed Services, the booking manager is higher than the resource manager. So they may have a booking manager that's at a very high level, and a resource manager that is in like an individual department or whatever. So you can view again all the role allocations for this particular work unit deliverable and all the different work units that you have to work with in the roles. One major thing here is that by clicking on the icon down in the role allocation summary, you see there's an icon that's called allocation and availability. Clicking on those will take you to, here's the other projects that this role is allocated to, and here's the availability of every resource under that role. So that availability kind of, is the detail behind all your monthly buckets that you see in this particular role allocation summary portlet. To the left, the icon all the way to the left is what creates the true requisition within Concilium. So by clicking on that, it will take you to what really does appear like your standard requisition page, but we do have whether you want, whether you want to do this as an individual contributor, which if that happens, that then takes you into the standard CA PPM resource allocation, resource finder, all that. But if you select pooling, then it just starts a process that goes through looking at the organization, looking at all the resources for that role within the organization, starts to just incrementally allocate resources. And without any, we don't care who it is, just if they have availability, zap them till they don't have any more availability, move to the next one. Take whatever they have, move to the next one. And this is how we got through one of the delivery lanes. I think Terry mentioned this earlier. One of the delivery lanes is just working at that higher level, because they're the ones that really don't, for project work, they may have 50% of their time on project work and 50% on all that other maintenance and field work and those, hurricane, or excuse me, I'm in Florida right now, so I'm thinking hurricanes, all those tornadoes, or, you could have hurricanes on a cell site too, cell site also. So this is what we're actually implementing this into production for Concilium next week, and it has been pretty well widely accepted by the EMS community for, putting these all in one place instead of, moving around. As you know, sometimes the CA PPM may not be as user-friendly as we all would like it. And these front-end displays have really been able to move the acceptance a bit further than regular resource management. So that's all that I have. Any questions?
I would add a comment there, is that
yes.
The other groups that aren't totally acceptable, we are implementing a learning we had at CA World the year before that, I believe it was from Mayor, where they kept saying that, well, those that don't adopt now will come crawling for the adoption later.
Hi, there's no questions in the chat, but if anybody, we are recording this just so everybody will know. Once it's available to me, I will post it via the user community. If you have any questions for Terry or Beverly, is there any way they can contact you? Terry
yes.
and Beverly, any way?
Yes, of course. So, yes, my email, well, I have several, but the one that's probably the best would be bev@excers.com.
Okay. And then for my name, Terry, you can see the spelling in the front of the slide, it's Terry.Gray@Ericsson.com.
And what I'll do is when I post it, I'll put your email addresses in there too. I post the recording. Well,
right.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Terry and Beverly, for presenting. We really and truly appreciate it. That's all I have for right now.
Thank you for the opportunity to share this progression that we've done with the tool.
Great. It was very informative. Thank you so much, guys.
All right. Everyone have a good day.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.